Welcome to the Belonging Project podcast. This is Fiorenza and I'm your host. The purpose of this podcast is to bring voices together to talk about belonging. Through inspiring, real-life conversations, we explore how belonging can show up in so many different ways, what it feels like to belong, and the impact of truly belonging. Each episode will offer you inspiration and practical strategies to find your true voice in your life and as a leader. Let's dive in. Hi, Jamie, and welcome to the Belonging Project podcast. I'm super excited to have you here today on the podcast and have a great conversation ahead. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Fiorenza. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for this.
Of course, I am as well. Let's start with a little bit about you. You're the founder and the CEO of Monumental, which is a digital marketing and PR agency. And I believe Monumental has a specific focus, and I would love to hear more about this, please.
Sure. As you said, we're a digital marketing and PR agency, and I think the thing that makes us very different from everyone else is our focus is very much on engaging and working with diverse communities, and we see ourselves as a bit of like an engine of diversity. So everything we do has a diverse arm to it, from the people we recruit and their backgrounds, to the companies that we work with, to the creators that we pay, to the freelancers, as well as then the 2,500 people who we've taught marketing to through the last 5 years. So everything we do is designed to engage, support, and empower diverse and minority communities.
That's wonderful. And do you have a specific niche, or could it be any minorities?
We do have kind of more experience in certain kind of sides of diversity than others, sexuality, gender probably being the biggest ones. But then we've also done a lot in religion and ethnicity. It kind of just depends on, for example, the religion piece, we did a lot within the app world. Whereas with LGBT side of things, we do a lot in supporting charities and events. So I guess each type of client aligns slightly differently to that big kind of diversity umbrella.
That sounds really interesting. I would love to know a little bit more about your own journey. How did you get to be the founder of Monumental? Have you always been in the digital marketing and PR space?
It's actually quite a ridiculous story. So I used to be a child model in Italy. And I loved it. And I never really understood why I loved it. And then when I was about 15, I started thinking about what is it about this that I enjoy so much? Because I wasn't too fussed on, clothing. Yes, I liked it. The experience was fun. But when I started thinking about it, it was very much the psychology of why were they picking me, and why at this location, and why were they taking the picture this way? And that kind of got me really thinking on the marketing side. So then I started working in events when I was 16 and kind of carried on and built up from there. I think the main driver behind Monumental was actually, I grew up gay in the Middle East, and seeing how bad and non-existent human rights were out there and how horrible my experience was on just being gay. I just wanted to make sure that the place I created and the home I created for Monumental was the most accepting and just the best place to be, no matter who you were. And I believe that creates better work. I believe it creates happier people, happier clients, and I think it brings out the best in people. So yeah, I guess I coupled my sort of modeling side of things and kind of marketing psychology side with something that was really, really important to me, which was for people to feel safe and celebrated.
I love this. And you've mentioned you grew up in Italy and then you moved to the Middle East. And then after you lived in the Middle East, you came to London or Scotland?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I moved to Scotland when I was 18. And that's when I started my first company. And from there, things kind of just one thing led on to the next. I got headhunted into a marketing kind of internship-y thing. I, at the time, didn't know what marketing was. I just knew I liked the psychology of things. And that sort of kicked everything off, really. So from there, then I moved up and down the country for different jobs before then starting Monumental in London in 2017. So it's been going quite a while now.
Yeah, wonderful. That's so amazing. And I really like how there is kind of a personal journey that it is interlinked with your professional journey and evolution there. So I'm curious about, I guess, if you don't mind, kind of touching a little bit on your experience living in the Middle East and being part of a minority in the Middle East. How was that for you personally in the day to day?
It was kind of weird. So I think I was able to really check out of it completely. I knew it was temporary. I knew I had a date that I could get out, and everything kind of felt very superficial because of it. So I was able to kind of adopt this mindset of none of this is real. Like this is not my real life. This is not my home. So I was able to completely, I guess the psychological word might be completely disassociate from everything and everyone around me. In hindsight, probably not the healthiest thing to do for 5 years, a teenage kind of time. But I think it was just a safety mechanism, right? And it worked well. It did its job. And I think it definitely allowed me to build a lot of like resilience and kind of mental strength and power, which meant that I was able to start the company I did at 21 because I had this kind of crazy level of focus and ability to kind of just block everything out and do it. So yeah, not the most positive experience, but there was positive experiences in there. There was obviously some really negative ones, which I think only really hit after I left, when I stopped kind of disassociating from everything. But yeah, it was a very, very weird experience, but I can see the positive and the negatives now with a little bit of time having passed.
Yeah. I mean, you may have felt this question coming, but what was the impact of that experience living in a place where you had to dissociate so much? What was the impact on your own sense of belonging?
Well, I think the impact was that I needed to create a place for myself because I never had one. Well, maybe never is a bit strong, but I didn't have one for a very long time. So I think that's why Monumental felt so personal at the beginning to me, maybe a little bit too personal because, founder life is a bit crazy already. And if you're putting all of that kind of psychology into it as well, it maybe created a bit of a crazy bond to start with. But yeah, I think the sense of belonging was really what I was looking for. And I definitely was able to achieve that through even just, coming back to the UK and building the company and the stuff that happened in between as well and other jobs. But I was very still, it took a while to come off of that sort of mindset. And I think I was very still focused on fitting in as opposed to belonging. And I think there's a real difference there. And I think true belonging only really happened when I was able to create my little world at Monumental.
And you mentioned that you realized that there was probably more fitting in that you were doing as opposed to feeling that you belonged. If you were to look back, how was that? What would be the key differences for you between fitting in and belonging?
I guess the key difference from my side is that the world kind of felt like a show when I was fitting in. I was used to that because I was a model as a child. So I kind of got the whole idea of okay, we're putting on this show to present this way and, elicit these feelings. That's what I was kind of really trained into and used to. So I think it happened really, really naturally to me. And I think the main difference with belonging was that I didn't have to be anything or think of anything. I could just show up. And that was really, really powerful. And I think it just allowed, and I think with that as well, belonging is around vulnerability and creativity and innovation and all those things that I don't think you could access when you're trying to not be you or trying to be something that is not authentically you. And I've definitely achieved more insane things since I belonged than I ever did by trying to fit in.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like work has been maybe one of the first kind of big, I'm going to say outlet where you felt that you could be yourself and you could help others and belong. Would that be fair?
100%, I would say so. And I think obviously the timing of it is really important. That was a time I then, moved back. So there was maybe more belonging in a social group, and then there was more belonging maybe in relationships and friendships. And I think work was maybe that final bit of like that completed that full belonging feeling. So I don't think it was it on its own. But I think it was definitely the final piece of the puzzle that then I think fed a lot of my then personal values and missions. And, I want to create a better world and I want to impact people like me who don't fit in, and give them a place to fit. So I think work allowed me to achieve that side of it as well, that kind of more mission and value and activism side as well, which I think that then definitely gave me a bigger sense of belonging.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm curious about in the work that you do now. So you're the founder, you're the CEO. When people are applying for, jobs to work with you in the agency, how does that go? Do you find people that have similar journey to yours, or are they looking for something else, quite a different journey? I'm just kind of curious to get a sense of that.
So everyone has a very unique journey. I don't think there's nobody at Monumental that has the traditional marketeer journey of like, went to a top tier university, then did an internship for 3 years, then did, like there's nothing traditional about anyone that works here. And we want to see, I mean, I'll be honest, I just hire on passion. Like if I see you've got something and you've got that desire to like create something and build something, then that's what I hire. Whether you have the right experience or tick the right boxes in terms of the logos on your CV, that doesn't really bother me. So I would say passion is a big one. And then the question we always ask is, why is diversity important to you? Which I mean can be a bit of like, oh, everybody asks that. But for us, it's really about the answer of, are they going to do the kind of the copy paste, like, oh, diversity is great because, the world's different. I want to see the real raw, like, why is it important to you as an individual, not to the world? So those would probably be my two key bits in terms of what we hire on. And I would say that usually most people we hire, we don't ever actually have a job ad out for. So it's people kind of that, might have reached out to us before and have built a relationship with us, and not in a nepotism kind of way, but, people that really get us and understand what we do and have made a point of keeping in touch and keeping up with Monumental, which I think is amazing, given as well there's, such staff shortages everywhere, that we still receive the amount of CVs and emails that we get. The downside is I can't give everyone a job yet, but we will soon.
Absolutely. That's great. And maybe someone is listening and they are interested, and now they have some pointers in terms of how to
Exactly.
prepare.
Yes, please reach out.
You've mentioned already before a little bit about your clients, what type of clients you work with. I'm curious about whether you are mostly UK based, or do you have global clients, global accounts that you work with?
Yeah, we've got global accounts. Majority of our accounts would cover EMEA, because we deliver, obviously being a diverse team, we can deliver our work in numerous different languages quite naturally, which I think lends itself quite well to then working with more international brands. Obviously, being a diversity agency, there's certain things that we just won't do. We won't work with anyone in Russia. We won't work with anyone in Saudi, unless they're obviously there from a kind of activism point of view. So, there was a company we spoke to in Saudi that was changing the way female entrepreneurship was seen in kind of Islamic countries. And, so that kind of thing, perfectly up our street. So yeah, it's a real mixed bag. I think a lot of our work is focused on kind of purpose driven brands, really, whether they are B2B or B2C. The kind of the purpose and the team is really what attracts us to the clients that we do work with.
Yeah, absolutely get that. So being purpose driven is a key pillar for the work you do, and clients you work with. Diversity, obviously, you've mentioned, being one of probably the biggest pillar as well. I'm curious, how does belonging, and here I'm going to say, how does belonging fit in?
I see what you did there.
For you as, I guess, the CEO, but also for your company, for your clients, the links that perhaps you see with belonging in your work?
So I think from within the company, the way that we have this, I can't remember the exact name of the file, but it's basically like the Monumental Bible, which is what we expect from you. And it sort of lays out it almost breaks all the myths that someone might have when they come into a job of like, oh, you have to stay till this time until that guy leaves. And, all of that, like we break all of that down. It also, I think on the first page, it's like, you belong. It's not about fitting in. So I think that really sets the scene in terms of like your experience at Monumental when you work here. And also it sets the kind of priorities. Like for us, it's all about doing great work, which impacts amazing people and communities. So that's all we care about. So it's really helpful in terms of setting the scene. In terms of clients and belonging, I think because, let's be real, we're not WPP. If you don't know us, you don't know us, and that's okay. So the clients that do know us and are in our ecosystem are usually very aligned with our values and way of working. So I don't think there's ever really been a meaningful time where a client relationship has been so difficult because they don't really get us and we don't have that sense of kind of shared values, which I think creates a lot of a feeling of belonging when we then work on campaigns. So I would say that, from a team side, we kind of set that expectation piece and are happy to develop that experience constantly. And then from a client side, it helps that our values are so out there and so kind of in everyone's face that the clients that we do speak to are very, very aligned with why we exist and what we expect of the people we work with as well. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but that's the kind of two sides that I see mainly.
Yeah, no, I think you did. And I very much resonate with having, this strong link with your values, with Monumental's, values. But, I'm kind of sensing that there may be also an alignment with your own as well.
Yeah.
So perhaps branching off a little bit more on the personal side of things, how do you define belonging now?
Well, I think if I had to do it with one word, it would be monumental. But for a bigger definition, I think it's just that sense. I think really, for me, it would really come down to vulnerability. And I think from my own personal journey, that's the thing that I had to work with the most and work on the most is how can I show up and be vulnerable. And I think that's what then allows for true belonging. So that's been my biggest learning and definitely my hardest lesson to kind of put into practice and really own. I suffered from really bad burnout after COVID, and I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my team. I didn't tell my clients, my friends. Like I was like, no, I'm going to deal with this. And I think I only really achieved true belonging when I was able to be vulnerable about the things that weren't so nice about my life. And, the team was really supportive. Clients were really supportive in sharing how their stories were similar. And that to me felt like really true belonging. And it was all made possible by, I guess, just taking a chance and being vulnerable and just, showing people the true you, I guess, without having to edit out the parts that maybe aren't the prettiest.
Yeah, this is such a great point. In my coaching work, I see and I work a lot on the vulnerability piece and feeling comfortable with allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, right? And you mentioned taking a chance, I think, and kind of, opening up and sharing what's going on for us. And there could be quite a strong sense of feeling exposed, almost like, you're naked on a stage, type of feeling. For anyone who may be struggling with this at this point in time, what tip could you give, or what advice would you be able to give?
Around being vulnerable,
Yeah.
I guess it's not as black and white as you might be thinking. Like, you don't, as you say, you're not naked on a stage or completely covered up. You can find a happy medium that feels comfortable for you as a starting point. And yeah, true vulnerability, I don't think it's about making you feel like crazy exposed, but it's about feeling seen. And I think, yeah, not starting off with the kind of craziest out there thing is probably helpful, but then also then knowing who can you be vulnerable with and who is your safe space to be vulnerable. Like, you don't have to be vulnerable with everyone you meet. You can choose who you can let in and not.
Yeah, this is such a great point. I'm hearing that there could be space to test the waters a little bit, and see, know who you can talk to. There could be an element of testing, trialing, with something that possibly will feel scary, but maybe it's not, scary level 10, it's scary level 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And then you made a great point, right? You have to work on that awareness, I guess, that not everyone can be your safe space. And perhaps some people or some groups, some situations might never be. And I think this point as well is quite key. And sometimes there could be some disappointment attached to it. One thing that's coming up for me is, family, how perhaps you would want your family to be, ideally speaking, you would want your family to be your safe space and the group that you can confide in and, all that, but that may not happen. And yeah, that can be a huge source of disappointment and aches, I guess.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, with kind of understanding the people around you and who you can be vulnerable with, it's also understanding who has done the work themselves. Because I think the people who are weirder around vulnerability are the ones who don't know how to be vulnerable themselves, haven't done the kind of thinking themselves or the development themselves. And that's okay. It's not your job to take on their stuff. And I think that's an important part of it as well, is, choosing the people to be vulnerable with isn't about who you're closest to or who's, immediately nearby, but I guess it's understanding who's at the same emotional intelligence as you're at. And I think at work, it's quite important as well when we then talk about it in a professional setting. Like, obviously good to be vulnerable, but there's still certain boundaries in the workplace, and how that vulnerability then looks in different situations will be completely different.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you do it now? If you were to be in a new situation, new setting, new group, do you have some kind of key points that you need to see or you need to feel in order to have a little bit of an internal green light? Yes, this is a safe space. This, is a space where I can be vulnerable.
Well, I mean, thankfully, because of the job I do, most places I go into are pretty safe, diverse, and open. So there's never kind of an environment that I would feel crazy uncomfortable in. And I think in terms of how I get vulnerable and how I open up, I very much, and I mean, maybe this is not the perfect thing to do, but I do feel drawn to people that have had their own share of stuff as well. Because in my head, that's like, okay, they will have done the work to understand that, get through that, and get to a point that they can calmly mention something maybe terrible that happened at some point in their life and how they got through it. So I think that's, for me, the easiest teller is just, how comfortable are they with their stuff? And if so, I can be comfortable with my bits as well. And I guess that works the other way around as well. Sometimes I do have to take a bit of a chance and be like, okay, I'm going to lay something out. Let's see how it's received. So yeah, I guess that would be my go-to. How would you define belonging?
Yeah, and it's fascinating to see how this definition for me has evolved, and I think is, forever evolving. There is a big part of belonging for me that links with how anchored I can feel in
Mm,
a space or with someone or with a group of people. It's not necessarily something that someone will say. You see what I mean? Like someone, can
yeah,
say all the right words, and but actually the intention isn't that. And so there are things in the vibe that I have to pick up that would give me a sense of ease. And it's not about feeling relaxed. Yeah, it's very much that sense of ease. Can I be anchored here? Can I feel grounded?
hmm,
Can I just be me? Or do I have to put on a show a little bit, like you said, right? Putting an
yeah,
act. Um, and, that's absolutely fine. There are, lots of settings, especially when it's a new setting. I feel like, I'm trialing a little bit. So I am myself, but probably not 100%. Kind
yeah,
of, yeah, kind of trialing it basically. But then it's like, what am I picking up? How am I reading the room? And does it feel that, yeah, I can be grounded and I can feel anchored here? And then that would almost like internally give me, that sense of, yeah, here I can
yeah.
belong, right? I can just kind of, yeah, be me.
And what space of time do you think that takes? Or does it vary?
Yeah, I think it depends of the stakes of what I'm looking for. If
Mm,
that's space that I'm actually, is it transactional? If it's purely a transactional space, then I'm not necessarily interested. Sometimes I've been, very pleasantly surprised. But I would, yeah, very much say it depends in terms of my expectations as well of that space. If that makes sense.
hmm. Yeah. And I like the idea of a vibe. And I think the vibe definitely kicks things off in terms of kind of that belonging journey. Because I think as well when, people start at new jobs or, those kind of professional environments, like I think you can get a good idea just from the vibe of like your interview or, your first day and stuff like that. But I think it does take a few days, a few weeks, maybe a few months to kind of fully, I guess, settle into that space and feel truly connected and anchored and all those things.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And, I've mentioned that the words that, someone would say wouldn't necessarily kind of, someone can say the right words, but then it wouldn't necessarily kind of create that belonging
Absolutely.
for me. But actually, on the other side of it, if the words would be totally wrong, that would be very hard for me to ignore.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. It is, yeah, it's vibe plus words plus actions plus environment plus, there's a lot that plays into it.
Yeah, the attitude as well, for sure. um but I guess as well, kind of probably at a higher level, or like maybe more encompassing level, even when I'm, so let's say I'm on my own, do I feel that I belong, generally speaking? I find that the more you get to know yourself and the more you work on your own self awareness, right? So, what are my values? What are my strengths?
Hmm.
What am I prioritizing right now? So, the more you prioritize your own self work, the more I feel that I belong in the higher sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And with it, I think is a sense of calm as well.
Hmm.
Because I think in the last few years, that's one thing I felt a real shift in is just this real sense of like peace. And I think that comes with that kind of belonging in yourself for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And that's where my anchor sense, my feeling of, am I anchored right now? Can I be grounded? That is something that it's a question that I could ask myself being alone or being in a situation with other people. It's not linked to someone else. There is also quite a self-related part to it for me as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, I think a lot of it is driven by self. And I think understanding yourself then will allow you to feel what true belonging is, because you are self-aware enough to know what you need.
Yeah. And also that can change over time. And that's also I guess the beauty, but also the length of the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not a one and you're done kind of thing, is it?
Absolutely. Is there anything that has surprised you, as years go by, thinking back on your own definition of belonging, that perhaps has changed or just got a little bit deeper, maybe?
I think it maybe just ties into what we were just talking about around that happiness and peacefulness within yourself. I think, we've all been taught about culture fit and all of that stuff, which I think almost refers to very much around what is everyone else doing and kind of doing that too. Whereas I think my kind of surprise with it is actually it's a lot more internal, and it's a lot more about understanding yourself to then understand how you want to show up in the world, and then which situations you feel most comfortable in. So it's actually less about others and more about you. So I think that's definitely how my understanding changed a bit over the last 10 years.
Yeah. And I guess I'm hearing that you feel as well that it's an always evolving type of definition.
100%. 100%. Yeah. That's the cool part. That's the exciting part. Where am I going to belong tomorrow?
Yeah. And it's hard at times, though. I feel like not, maybe a month ago, I was super clear on articulating, what belonging is. And then, I might have kind of a spark of something, an idea, or just something else that has come in. And now I'm like, oh, okay, so there's this new element or this new angle, and I want to explore that, or this is shifting things slightly. It's just making it harder at times, but it's quite fun to see where you can go with it.
Yeah. And I think it will mean different things to different people, and, different factors will mean more to different people than others. I think for me, like the acceptance piece and the diversity piece is crazy important. To someone else, actually, the supportiveness and nurture of an environment might be more important. So I think that's maybe why it's hard to define, because I think it's very specific to you as an individual and your experience and what you value and prioritize.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Jamie, for this conversation. This was really fun and really grounding, actually, on my end to have this chat with you.
I loved it. Honestly, I feel like I need to go off and go sit in a dark room for 2 days and just think everything through, because there's so many things going through my mind right now.
Yeah. And I find it hard as well sometimes, where to stop. But at the same time, I accept that there will never really be a point where it's like, okay, this is it. This is where to stop, because there's so much about someone's journey and, how it links with belonging, how you can define belonging and kind of go deeper with each question. I'm trying to do it organically, but there's that.
No, it's fabulous. Thank you so much for having me. I've loved it.
You can follow the podcast on LinkedIn at the Belonging Project Podcast. You can also hit subscribe and stay up to date with our episodes. And do feel free to get in touch with me on coaching@fiorenzarossini.com. Thank you again, and see you next time.